My name is Mary. I was 33 years old the night my father threw my grandfather out into a storm. Even now, years later, I can still see that moment clearly. The rain was falling hard. The wind shook the trees outside. The sky was dark, and thunder rolled across the fields. And there stood my grandfather. 78 years old. Soaked from head to toe. Holding a small suitcase. Alone. The worst part? He had already given my parents everything. A year earlier, Grandpa sold the ranch that had been in our family for generations. The ranch wasn't just land. It was his life. He had spent decades working there. Every fence post. Every barn. Every field. He knew them all by heart. When he finally sold it, he received $1.2 million. Most people thought he would keep the money for himself. But he didn't. Instead, he handed every dollar to my father. There was only one condition. Take care of me for the rest of my life. That was it. No complicated contracts. No long list of rules. Just a simple promise between a father and a son. My father smiled. He shook Grandpa's hand. He promised he would never let anything happen to him. Back then, everyone believed him. Including Grandpa. Including me. But promises are easy when money is involved. Keeping them is much harder. At first, everything seemed fine. My parents moved Grandpa into their house. They gave him a nice bedroom. My mother cooked his favorite meals. My father told everyone how proud he was to care for his dad. Whenever relatives visited, they acted like the perfect family. Grandpa seemed happy. For a while. Then little things started changing. Small things. Things most people wouldn't notice. But Grandpa noticed. And so did I. The first sign came during Sunday dinner. Grandpa was telling one of his old ranch stories. He loved those stories. Usually everyone listened. But that night, my father interrupted him. "Dad, you've told that one before." The room went quiet. Grandpa stopped talking. He forced a smile. "Oh. Right." Nobody said anything after that. The next week, it happened again. And again. Soon every story Grandpa told was treated like an annoyance. Every memory became a burden. Every conversation became something people wanted to end quickly. My mother started rolling her eyes whenever he asked questions. My father became impatient whenever Grandpa needed help. At first, I hoped I was imagining it. But I wasn't. Each month, things got worse. One day I visited unexpectedly. I found Grandpa sitting alone in the kitchen. The television wasn't on. The lights were dim. He looked smaller somehow. Older. Tired. "Everything okay?" I asked. He smiled. That smile broke my heart. Because it wasn't real. "Oh, I'm fine." But his eyes told a different story. A few minutes later, my mother walked into the room. Immediately her face changed. She became cheerful. Friendly. Perfect. The performance was so obvious it made me sick. That night, I drove home feeling uneasy. Something wasn't right. I just didn't know how bad it had become. A few weeks later, Grandpa called me. That alone was unusual. He almost never called first. His voice sounded quiet. Careful. "Mary, are you busy?" "No." "What's wrong?" There was a pause. A long pause. Then he laughed softly. "Nothing. I just wanted to hear your voice." Something about that answer hurt. We talked for almost an hour. Mostly about ordinary things. Weather. Old memories. Coffee. Birds in his backyard. But underneath every sentence was loneliness. The kind of loneliness people try hard to hide. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was asking for help without actually saying it. Then came the night everything changed. I had just finished work. I was living in a tiny apartment across town. My software startup had failed months earlier. Bills were piling up. My savings were nearly gone. I was barely keeping my life together. Outside, rain slammed against my windows. The weather report warned people to stay indoors. Then my phone rang. It was Grandpa. When I answered, I heard wind, rain, and breathing. Heavy breathing. Grandpa? His voice trembled. Mary. My heart immediately started racing. What's wrong? Another pause. Then he said words I will never forget. Your father asked me to leave. For a moment, I couldn't speak. What? He said I'm causing problems. I felt ice spread through my chest. Where are you? I'm outside. Outside. In that storm. At 78 years old. I grabbed my keys and ran. The drive felt endless. Rain hammered my windshield. The roads were nearly empty. My hands shook the entire time. When I finally reached my parents' house, I slammed on the brakes. And there he was. Standing beside the curb. Holding a suitcase. Getting soaked. No umbrella. No coat. Nothing. The front porch lights glowed behind him. Inside the house, I could see shadows moving. Warm. Dry. Comfortable. While Grandpa stood outside like he was unwanted garbage. I jumped out of my car. Grandpa. His face brightened when he saw me. But the sadness in his eyes remained. I grabbed his suitcase. Then I marched toward the front door. I was furious. The kind of anger that makes your whole body shake. My father opened the door before I even knocked. Almost like he expected me. What are you doing? I demanded. His jaw tightened. This is family business. Family business? I pointed toward Grandpa. He's standing in a storm. My mother appeared behind him. She looked annoyed. Not guilty. Annoyed. We can't do this anymore, she said. Do what? Take care of him. The words stunned me. He gave you $1.2 million. My father's face darkened. That money is gone. I stared at him. Gone? How could $1.2 million be gone? But before I could ask, he stepped back. We're done discussing this. Then he closed the door. Right in my face. I stood there frozen. Unable to believe what had happened. Behind me, thunder cracked across the sky. And suddenly I understood something. My parents weren't going to change their minds. They weren't sorry. They weren't ashamed. They had already made their choice. And that choice wasn't Grandpa. I walked back to the car. Grandpa climbed into the passenger seat quietly. Neither of us spoke during the drive. We didn't need to. The silence said everything. When we reached my apartment, Grandpa looked around carefully. The place was tiny. One bedroom. Old furniture. Cheap carpet. Boxes stacked in corners. Nothing special. I felt embarrassed. Sorry it's cramped. He smiled. For the first time that night, the smile looked real. It feels like home. I nearly cried. Over the next few days, we created a routine. Every morning we drank terrible coffee together. Every afternoon we talked while I searched for freelance work. Every evening we shared dinner at my tiny kitchen table. The apartment felt crowded. But it also felt warm. For the first time in months, Grandpa seemed relaxed. The tension slowly left his shoulders. The sadness in his eyes started fading. One morning I found him studying my laptop. What are you working on? I laughed. Nothing successful. He grinned. Try me. So I explained everything. My startup. The software project. The investors who walked away. The mistakes I'd made. The money I'd lost. Most people got bored when I talked about technology. Not Grandpa. He listened carefully. Asked questions. Took notes. By the end of the conversation, he understood more than some investors ever had. Over the next few weeks, he became my unofficial partner. Every morning we reviewed ideas. Every afternoon we solved problems. Every evening we argued about designs. Sometimes he drove me crazy. Sometimes I drove him crazy. But we were building something together. And somehow, it worked. One night we sat at the kitchen table eating cheap takeout. Grandpa leaned back in his chair. You know what your problem is? I laughed. Only one? You're afraid. I frowned. Afraid of what? Success. I nearly dropped my fork. That doesn't even make sense. He pointed at me. It makes perfect sense. I wanted to argue. But deep down, I knew he was right. Failure had made me cautious. Scared. I kept playing safe. Grandpa saw through all of it. That conversation changed something inside me. The next morning I attacked the project with new energy. And little by little, things improved. Months passed. The software became stronger. New opportunities appeared. Hope returned. Then one afternoon I noticed something strange. Grandpa had dressed up. Nice shirt. Polished shoes. Fresh haircut. Big date? I joked. He laughed. No. Then where are you going? He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he smiled. Taking care of something. The answer felt mysterious. But I didn't push. When he returned later that evening, he seemed happy. Lighter somehow. Like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. I asked again where he had gone. He only smiled. You'll understand someday. Those words stayed with me. Because they sounded important. Like a secret waiting to be revealed. And I had no idea that secret was about to change everything. 1 week later, my mother called. For the first time since throwing Grandpa out. Her voice sounded sweet. Too sweet. The way it always sounded when she wanted something. Mary, we should talk. I immediately felt suspicious. After months of silence, why now? What do you want? A pause. Then she sighed dramatically. We miss Grandpa. I looked across the room. Grandpa sat by the window reading. Safe. Warm. Happy. For the first time in a long time. And something told me my mother's sudden concern had nothing to do with love. It had something to do with something else. Something hidden. Something important. Something that was about to turn our entire family upside down. After that strange phone call from my mother, I couldn't stop thinking about it. She said they missed Grandpa. But I didn't believe her. Not for 1 second. People don't throw someone into a storm and suddenly start missing them. Something else was going on. Something she wasn't telling me. That evening, I told Grandpa about the call. He listened quietly. His expression never changed. When I finished, he simply nodded. I figured they would call eventually. I stared at him. You did? He smiled gently. Some people only remember your value when they think they're losing something. His words felt deeper than they sounded. Like he knew something I didn't. Like he was waiting for a certain moment. I wanted to ask more questions. But before I could, he changed the subject. That became a pattern. Whenever the conversation moved toward my parents, Grandpa would quietly steer it somewhere else. At the time, I thought he was trying to avoid conflict. Later, I realized there was another reason. A much bigger reason. Over the next several weeks, life continued. Our project kept improving. A small investor showed interest. Then another. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful. Grandpa was excited too. Every day he asked for updates. Every day he celebrated even the smallest victory. It felt like he believed in me more than I believed in myself. One afternoon, while we were working at the kitchen table, Grandpa suddenly became quiet. Very quiet. I looked up from my laptop. "Everything okay?" He smiled. But the smile seemed tired. "A little tired today." That answer worried me. Because Grandpa was never the type to complain. If he admitted he was tired, it meant he felt much worse than he was saying. Over the next few days, I noticed other changes. He slept longer. He ate less. He moved slower. I suggested seeing a doctor. At first, he refused. Finally, he agreed. The doctor ran tests. Then more tests. A week later, we sat in a small office waiting for results. The doctor walked in with a serious expression. My stomach immediately tightened. I knew that look. It wasn't good. The doctor explained everything carefully. Some health problems had gotten worse. Much worse. Treatment might help. But there were no guarantees. As the doctor talked, I felt my chest grow heavy. I looked at Grandpa. He stayed calm. Calmer than me. When the appointment ended, we walked to the parking lot in silence. Finally, I spoke. "We'll fight this." He smiled softly. "Maybe." The answer terrified me. Because it sounded like someone preparing for goodbye. The following months became precious. Every day mattered. Every conversation mattered. Every cup of coffee mattered. Sometimes we'd sit on the balcony watching the sunset. Sometimes we'd talk about the ranch. Sometimes we'd laugh about old family stories. And sometimes we'd sit quietly. Not saying anything at all. Those moments became my favorite. One evening, Grandpa surprised me. He handed me a small wooden box. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside were old photographs. Pictures from decades ago. Family gatherings. Birthdays. Holidays. And there, in almost every photo, was Grandpa smiling. Working. Building. Protecting. Holding our family together. I felt tears forming. "You kept all these?" He nodded. Families forget where they came from. I carefully turned another photo over. On the back, he had written dates and memories. Tiny pieces of history. Pieces I suddenly realized could disappear forever. That night, I stayed awake long after Grandpa went to bed. Looking through every picture. Every memory. Every moment. And deep down, I knew time was running out. A few weeks later, my mother called again. This time she sounded desperate. "Can we visit?" The question shocked me. 4 months they hadn't cared. Now suddenly they wanted to visit? I looked at Grandpa. He simply shrugged. "If you want." Part of me wanted to refuse. Another part wanted answers. So I agreed. The visit was awkward from the moment they arrived. My mother brought cookies. My father brought fake smiles. Neither fooled anyone. Grandpa welcomed them politely. But there was distance now. A wall that hadn't existed before. The conversation felt forced. Unnatural. Like everyone was pretending. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Dad, we made mistakes." Grandpa remained silent. My mother leaned forward. "We want to make things right." Still silence. Then Grandpa asked a simple question. "The money." Both of my parents froze. I noticed it immediately. My father looked away. My mother's face tightened. "Things happened," she said. What things? No answer. The room felt smaller. The tension grew heavier. Finally, Grandpa nodded. I understand. But his voice carried disappointment. Not anger. Not hatred. Disappointment. Somehow that seemed worse. A few minutes later, my parents left. As soon as the door closed, I turned toward Grandpa. What was that about? He looked out the window. The truth always shows itself eventually. Again with the mysterious answers. Again with the secrets. And again, I felt like something huge was waiting just around the corner. Then one morning, everything changed. I woke up to complete silence. No coffee brewing. No radio playing. No footsteps. Nothing. A terrible feeling hit me instantly. I rushed toward Grandpa's room. The door was slightly open. I pushed it wider. And stopped. Grandpa was lying peacefully in bed. His eyes closed. His face calm. For 1 second, I convinced myself he was sleeping. Then reality hit. My knees nearly gave out. No. The word came out as a whisper. I walked closer. My hands trembling. Tears already falling. Grandpa was gone. The man who saved me. The man who believed in me. The man who stood beside me when nobody else would. Gone. The next several days felt unreal. Phone calls. Funeral arrangements. Paperwork. Visitors. Everything blurred together. I barely slept. Barely ate. Barely functioned. People kept telling me Grandpa had lived a good life. Maybe he had. But that didn't make losing him hurt any less. The funeral was held on a cloudy afternoon. Friends came. Neighbors came. Former ranch workers came. People traveled from all over to say goodbye. Because Grandpa had touched so many lives. My parents came too. Watching them stand there felt strange. Almost wrong. As people shared stories about Grandpa's kindness, I noticed something. My parents looked nervous. Not sad. Nervous. The difference mattered. After the service ended, relatives gathered outside. Everyone talked quietly. Remembering Grandpa. Sharing memories. Then I overheard my mother speaking to an aunt. At least things are settled now. Settled? The words made my stomach turn. Grandpa had barely been gone a few hours. And already she was thinking about something else. Something involving money. Something involving inheritance. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying memories. Conversations. Moments. The mysterious trips. The secret smiles. The strange comments. Something wasn't adding up. 3 days later, the family gathered at a lawyer's office. The official will reading. My parents arrived early. Ryan arrived too. Even though he hadn't visited Grandpa once after the storm. Not once. Yet somehow he looked confident. Almost excited. That told me everything. They expected money. Maybe a lot of money. The waiting room buzzed with quiet conversation. Then the lawyer appeared. Everyone, please come in. We followed him into a conference room. Large table. Leather chairs. Stacks of paperwork. The atmosphere felt heavy. The lawyer sat down. Opened a file. Adjusted his glasses. Then began reading. At first, everything seemed normal. A few personal gifts. Family keepsakes. Small donations to charities. Then came the first surprise. The lawyer cleared his throat. Before his passing, Mr. Parker created several additional legal arrangements. My mother's smile disappeared. My father leaned forward. The lawyer continued. These arrangements are separate from the will. The room became very quiet. I could feel everyone's attention sharpening. Then the lawyer opened another folder. A thicker one. Much thicker. And suddenly I remembered something. The mysterious trip. The dress shirt. The haircut. The secret smile. My heart started pounding. The lawyer looked directly at me. Several months ago, your grandfather established a trust. The room went silent. Completely silent. My mother blinked. My father frowned. Ryan looked confused. The lawyer continued. The trust contains assets, investments, and ownership interests that are not controlled by the will. My father's face turned pale. My mother sat perfectly still. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The lawyer opened another document. Then everything changed. The primary beneficiary of this trust is Mary. For a moment, I thought I heard him wrong. The room exploded. What? My mother shouted. That's impossible. Ryan yelled. My father jumped to his feet. The lawyer calmly raised a hand. Please sit down. Nobody listened. My mother looked furious. That isn't fair. The lawyer's expression hardened. Fairness is not relevant. These are legally binding documents. The room fell silent again. Then the lawyer continued reading. The trust included investments, savings, property interests, business assets, and something else. Something nobody expected. The remaining land connected to the old ranch. My father's face became completely colorless. My mother looked like she might faint. Ryan stared at the table. Then came the final surprise. The lawyer pulled out an envelope. This letter was written by Mr. Parker. My chest tightened. A letter. From Grandpa. The lawyer unfolded it carefully. Then began reading. If you are hearing this, I am gone. Immediately, tears filled my eyes. The lawyer continued. I spent my life building something for my family. The room remained perfectly still. I believed trust mattered more than money. My mother looked down. My father avoided eye contact. Unfortunately, some people value money more than people. The words hit like thunder. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The lawyer kept reading. Mary gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. Tears rolled down my face. Mary treated me with dignity when others treated me like a burden. My mother started crying. But nobody comforted her. Not this time. Not after everything. The letter continued. Character is revealed when there is nothing left to gain. Those words seemed directed at everyone in the room. Especially my parents. Especially Ryan. Then came the final line. The line that broke me. To Mary, thank you for reminding me what family truly means. I lowered my head. Unable to stop crying. The lawyer folded the letter carefully. The room remained silent. My parents looked defeated. Ryan looked stunned. Years of manipulation. Years of favoritism. Years of selfish choices. And now they were facing the consequences. Not because of revenge. Not because of anger. Because of truth. The lawyer finished explaining the trust. The documents were solid. Everything had been prepared months earlier. Every signature. Every filing. Every detail. Completely legal. Completely final. There would be no successful challenge. No loopholes. No way around it. For the first time, my parents couldn't talk their way out of a problem. After the meeting ended, people slowly left. My mother approached me. Her eyes were red. I never thought it would end like this. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Then I asked the question that had lived inside me for months. Why did you throw him out? She opened her mouth. Then closed it again. No answer. Because there wasn't a good answer. There never had been. Eventually, she walked away. My father followed. Ryan followed. And just like that, they were gone. The parking lot slowly emptied. I stood there alone, holding Grandpa's letter, feeling both heartbroken and grateful. I would have traded every dollar to have him back. But that wasn't possible. What I could do was honor him. Honor the man who never stopped believing in me. Months passed. The business grew. The trust helped secure my future. But the most valuable thing Grandpa left behind wasn't money. It was perspective. He taught me that family isn't defined by blood alone. Family is defined by love. By loyalty. By showing up when someone needs you. My relationship with my parents never recovered. Some people thought that was tragic. Maybe it was. But healing doesn't always mean reconnecting. Sometimes healing means letting go. Today, Grandpa's letter sits framed in my office. Whenever life becomes difficult, I read it again. And every time, I remember the lesson he wanted me to learn. Money fades. Property changes hands. Success comes and goes. But kindness matters forever. The people who abandoned Grandpa lost far more than an inheritance. They lost his trust. And once that was gone, nothing could replace it. As for me, I still miss him every day. I always will. But when I think about that stormy night, I no longer feel anger. I feel gratitude. Because the night my parents abandoned Grandpa was also the night I got to know him better than anyone else ever did. And in the end, that became the greatest gift of all.